Are you struggling to come up with original content week in and week out? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients, let them talk about what they care about most, and never run out of content ideas again. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I am your host for today's episode, Nikki Ivy with Sweetfish Media. I've got with me today Jan-Paul van Maaren, who is Vice President of TÜV SÜD. JP, how you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Nikki?
I am well. The sun is starting to shine a little bit here in Austin, so I can't complain.
Boston is good today, but we're going to go back to bad for the rest of the week.
That's how it is around here a lot of the time too. But I'm excited that you're with us. You're going to be talking to us today about managerial courage, which I really do want to dig into. But first, I would love it if you would just give us a few minutes of, a background on yourself and what you guys are up to over there at TÜV SÜD these days.
Well, we're really the North American branch, North American arm of a very large 150 plus year old German company, which as its mission has always had to protect society from technology, from its latest technology. It started with steam engines and exploding boilers. That's really where it started. But now we're heavily involved in electric cars, in autonomous cars, in cybersecurity, factories that get hacked. We're heavily involved in testing medical devices, helping companies meet standards so they can import their products markets overseas if their home market is the United States. So that mission is still there after 150 years, is to protect society from the latest technology. And so one of the things that we do is we have about 18 labs in North America, and customers can come in there to test their latest product, whether it's an IoT device that's connected to a wireless radio that has to meet FCC standards, or whether it is, the latest battery that has to go into an electric vehicle and that needs to be explosion proof, that needs to have a certain performance in cycling, charging, discharging, or whether a device can be hacked, can be penetrated by some wireless, some radio signal. We can test all of those things, and customers come in, test their latest products, and we're really part of the customer's R&D process to help them not only meet standards but make sure that their products are safe and don't hurt their consumers and don't have consequences that are unintended.
That's a really bold mission that you guys have. And to come right out and say, like, we're protecting people from technology at the inflection point that the humanity is with technology these days, it speaks to one of the things we're talking about today. So courage.
Yes.
Talk really quickly, just an overview. What do you mean when you say managerial courage?
Very simply said, it's the ability of somebody who's in charge of a group of people. A group of people looks to this person for direction. The ability to stand alone in a situation where the future isn't clear. There seems to be very high risk. We're going into some new territory. There are high standards, some new expectations that some are not able to adhere to. Then somebody has to step up in a situation where almost everyone avoids stepping forward to make a decision, either to lay down some standards, to make a decision so that the team gets unstuck, even though the future isn't entirely clear. That's really what I mean by managerial courage, is the ability to stand alone in situations that are difficult. And the symptom is that everyone else runs away from the problem. Yeah. And at that point, somebody who has managerial courage runs in the opposite direction towards the problem. And I think there's a couple of really key ground rules, because it's easy. I walk towards a problem and start shooting from the hip. Okay, corral, maybe I'll survive, maybe I won't.
Yeah.
That's not a sustainable behavior for anybody.
Well, that's a question I had though, right? I mean, it's like a lot of us would like to think of ourselves as, people who have that kind of courage, or who, especially in business, but folks do avoid these situations. What are some of the reasons that you think that people do avoid these situations, even though it's sort of counter to how we'd like to think of ourselves?
Well, at the end, it all comes down to fear, right? It's fear for oneself, for what it could mean to be wrong, to the impact on, in retrospect, it could be wrong, what it could mean for one's image, one's brand, one's perception and career in the organization. And that's what that's why so many people avoid difficult situations where there is perceived to be high risk and high uncertainty. But those are exactly the moments where organizations need leadership,
Sure.
because otherwise they just stay stuck. And then competition or customers move away from you because you're not able to move beyond where you are. And some of the basic ground rules, I think, of using the skill of managerial courage is number one, your motivation is absolutely vital. You have to be motivated by achieving the best possible outcome for the team. And explicitly, you cannot be motivated by what's best for you yourself, because the team will see through that very clearly. And they will know, just like everyone else, that's why they're avoiding the situation, avoiding decisions, that they will know that your decision is motivated by self-interest, and that will not gain you commitment from the rest of the team. So I think that's a very important factor. You have to be motivated by what's best for the team. And then secondly, you have to be willing to be painfully aware of all of the viewpoints on the team. You need to listen to all the voices. That doesn't mean that you're going to veer 100% to one side or 100% to the other side. But you have to go through the process of becoming painfully aware of the differences that are within the team. Because most leaders are not that good that they know everything about all possible avenues of direction. Yeah. So you have to go through the process of becoming painfully aware. It's much better to be painfully aware than blissfully ignorant. Although it's nice to be blissfully ignorant, it leads to no good.
It's interesting that you said that, when you identify these opportunities or points where there is a need for someone to step up with and sort of apply managerial courage, that you shouldn't go into it with these self-serving reasons. So then when we think about what the benefit is to that person that's willing to step up, what are the benefits for that individual and for the organization?
Well, for the organization, it is that you make progress. You proceed where your competition, other departments facing the same situation with the same difficulty of making a decision may not be able to make a decision. That alone will gain you an advantage. The perfect answer in retrospect in business does not exist. There are always trade-offs. But staying stuck in where you are, not moving forward with all the resources that you've been given as a manager, that's not an option. And obviously, at the end of the day, if you use your managerial skills, your courageous managerial courage properly, meaning you listen to everyone, you go through the process of becoming painfully aware of all the differences, and then clearly communicating a direction that is focused on achieving the greatest good to the team, not you personally, explicitly not you personally, then you'll gain the respect from your team. Because so many people are not capable of doing those two very simple but not easy things. Yeah. That means people will follow you. They're willing to listen to you, follow you through thick and thin. I've learned that in those rare situations where you go through hard decisions with a team, that you form far deeper and stronger relationships in that adversity, in that difficult situation, than you can when things are moving swimmingly. It's relatively easy to manage through situations when things are moving well. But it's through that adversity that you've built the greatest and the deepest relationships. It's the same with customers. When customers have great problems, great difficulties, and you are able to solve their problems, that's where they really learn to understand and value your contribution. When things are going well and you're never really on the radar screen, it's easier to fall off the radar screen and be replaced by somebody else. But when those great customer challenges, those great difficulties, even if they could be inflicted by yourself when you're shipping something late or your quality isn't good, stepping forward and solving that problem for the customer, that is more memorable than so many other things that you can do. But again, it takes managerial courage to move towards the problem and not run away from it, or even worse, standing on the sideline, hoping that someone else will step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And even as you're talking, it's just, bringing right back to the front of my mind experiences that I've had with leaders that demonstrated that, or even just folks that were, on the same team as I was. We were individual contributors, but just folks that just exhibited that quality to sort of step in and have that courage. What are some examples that you've seen where this made an impact?
Yeah, a while back, I was a member of an IPO team, and we were on the road with our investment bankers. It's the CEO, the CFO, and then a small group of people. We were on our way to raise over $2 billion. There's a lot of stake. In like three weeks, you're presenting your company over 120 times. It's 8 or 10 presentations every single day. You're on planes. Everybody's tired. But it's really vitally important. You have to perform every time you're in front of those potential investors. And it's a fine-honed machine. The team, everyone has their role to play. So many minutes for the opening section, so many minutes for the financial section, so many minutes for Q&A. And when you're on message, when you're really working well and you've practiced this, you can be really, really awesome. You can tell the potential investors are engaged. They ask questions. You can see their body language. You're making a great impression. But so we had one day, it was actually in Boston, and it's one of the biggest concentrations of investors, where the CEO at the very first presentation that day of 9 presentations in a row, he was just completely off base. He went twice his allotted time, talked about things that weren't part of our message, and it was an awful half-hour meeting. And for the rest of the team, everybody was just really worried. We had to score. We had to perform that whole day.
Yeah. And
so who is going to tell the CEO of a company that's about to go public that he needs to stick to the message and, be part of the team and not, derail the whole rest of the team for the next 9. So anyway, it fell to the person who was the project manager. It was somebody from the investment bank. And so he stepped forward, and while we were walking on the sidewalk from one presentation to the next presentation to the next building, he had a conversation with the CEO and said, "Look, Joe, you need to stick to the message. We need you to stick to the message. If we stick to the message, we know from previous presentations, we're doing great. We're going to do great. But this one didn't go well, and it was really on you this time." And so the whole team sees that because we're all walking there, right? So the communication to the whole team is clear. Everyone knows, hey, somebody stepped forward, made the courageous call. Mm-hmm. He understood what happened there. He saw that the whole team had that same reaction. So, again, the basic principles, you're painfully aware that the entire team is aware of something that's not going well. A decision needs to be made. Mm-hmm. And in this case, it's the project manager who needs to step forward. And they were expecting him to step forward, and he did. And as a result of that whole rest of the day, the next 8 presentations went just absolutely brilliantly, because now everybody felt, wow, we really are a team. I mean, we really have the ability to say what needs to be said, mm-hmm. to make the decision, the corrections that need to be made. Mm-hmm. And we were just really on that day. And that one conversation on that sidewalk, where the banker in this case used his ability to manage courageously, made all the difference.
Yeah, I mean, that blows me away, because I've seen situations like that where no one stepped up. And to your point, it just not only what it does to the performance of the team and getting their goals, but just the morale. More this thing hangs over your head, where, like you said, folks are painfully aware that, something's not being handled correctly, but yet we're in the absence of that kind of courage. God, it takes its toll. So
it does.
It's really important.
And another example where that exactly occurred, where managerial courage had clearly been lacking, is I inherited a service organization that was basically 3 organizations merged together through acquisitions, serving the same customers, but with different products. And what had been done is all of the service teams had been co-located in the same buildings, but they were using different spare part systems. They had different hourly rates. They had different warranty commitments, different response time. So customers were really confused, because there were people with the same company name serving products in their factory that the same company had made, and it was all done being completely differently. And so it was very clear when I went around and visited, about 350 people in more than a dozen countries. it became very clear, having lunch with some of the service engineers, meeting with some of the customers, everybody already knew what needed to be done. That we could not, with 3 different separate teams, have a cohesive approach to customers. That we had to have spare parts in 3 different systems. That we had to have pricing schemes that were, 3 different versions of it. That it was really the prior year that the decision that needed to be made, which is to unify this leadership. And yes, then there are fewer seats after the music stops than there are currently being occupied. But all the service engineers already knew. All the customers already knew. It was management that hadn't made the decision. And so as a result, management during that prior year had lost a lot of credibility, because the key reason why we couldn't do a great job for customers, which was to bring the management of all those 350 people under one group, under one set of leadership principles, and yes, one set of leaders, that decision had not been made.
Yeah.
But it actually made it very easy for me to then move forward and go through a consolidation process, which, yes, it has hard aspects to it because not everybody has a seat after the music stops. But it was not like the organization wouldn't accept it. They had already, so you go through the process of meeting with your people, meeting with your customers, and become painfully aware of where the real problems are. And then you're in a position to say, all right, a decision needs to be made here. And there's only one person who can make it. And so you go ahead and do it, because the greatest common good comes from it. All your customers are going to be a lot happier. Your engineers will see, wow, what really held me back, because I have to order spare parts for this product on this system and for that product on that system. And the billing is all different, and it's all a lot of work. And it's not necessary because the decisions that need to be made haven't been made. So management regains credibility. And then you can go through walls with that team, because they know that when some serious decisions need to be made, a problem needs to be solved, that there are people there listening and able and willing to make the decision.
Yeah.
That needs to be made.
All right, today's growth story is about search engine marketing. Clear Company is an HR tech company that was doing a lot of things right. Their messaging was clear, their product produced incredible results, but they were struggling to drive qualified traffic to their website. Then they found Directive Consulting, a B2B search marketing agency. Within the first 12 months of working with Directive, Clear Company was able to increase their qualified lead volume by 157%. I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
The things you're saying, a lot of us have had these experiences, like on either side of it, and hadn't maybe identified what exactly it is that we were seeing. And what we were seeing was the presence or the absence of managerial courage. And so it's been really exciting to pick your brain about this. And I want to take it a step further.
Yeah, go for it.
You've been a really good resource on this subject. And a lot of the stuff you talk about reminds me of a book that we're reading here at Sweetfish Media, Radical Candor, which is that same idea of like just stepping up and being transparent when it's necessary, when other folks don't want to.
Yeah.
What are some of the learning resources, whether it's books you've read, blogs, podcasts you listen to, that sort of you're excited about or that inform your approach?
Yeah, I read the occasional book. Actually, with the whole management team, we've just been reading through Patrick Lencioni's book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Mm-hmm. It's a nice, easy read. It's a prose style read where he, his messages are kind of woven through a real, not a real, but it sounds like a real business story. It's a scenario. Yeah.
I love prose.
And it's an easy read, but it goes through these same issues that, there are key reasons like indecisiveness or false consensus, but that decision making is one of the critical factors in keeping a team together and making sure that people are willing to be honest with one another, and speaking up about what's not working for the team.
Yeah,
is one of the lessons learned. But other than that, I love to see to watch podcasts that friends and colleagues send through LinkedIn, for example, and articles that that people send around that have been read by somebody you respect.
Sure.
And every now and then I get something from HBR or little snippets that come through email, but I have to be pretty selective on what I read out of those. It's nice to get something from somebody you respect, you've worked with, and say, wow, if he's interested or she's interested in that, then let's take a look.
Definitely. Yep. That's how it works.
Yeah, exactly.
One more thing, because I'm, like I said, you've just dropped some jewels on us, and I know folks are going to want to hear more from you, keep up with, how you're doing and what other content you might be putting out. How can folks connect with you?
They can reach me via email at jan-paul.vanmaaren@tuvsud.com or via LinkedIn. There are not many Van Maarens with AA in LinkedIn.
It's true.
In the United States in particular, they're all, those that are Van Maarens in the United States are all part of the family tree going back to the 19th century. Yes, they all are. Yes, we have found that, traced them all back. But they're not many, maybe 20 or so.
Well, you are a rare and valuable Van Maaren, and I'm glad that you came to spend this time with me today.
Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you so much, JP. Have a good one.
And you. Take care.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.